Hi, good afternoon. I'm Yin Leng from the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information at Nanyang Technological University. I'm going to actually talk a bit about the A-Star project. And, it's true. The elderly, research is still very new in terms of using, technologies. And we have not developed a lot of games like I've done before, but I'm going to actually describe the work that we have carried out for the last 2.5 years under the A-Star grant, and begin to explain the process in which we came up with this idea of the virtual exercise therapist. And the team, we have a couple of people from the university as well as from I2R and A-Star. And we also have collaborators. We are starting to talk to TTSH because we are not medical doctors. So we need to understand what will be the health outcomes. Definitely we need the technical team. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually highlight the A-Star project because I think that will give us an idea of, the kind of work that we do in terms of very new areas. How do we actually go about, designing things for the silver industry? And then begin to actually give some justification in terms of this virtual exercise therapy. Right. So as mentioned earlier, the world is aging. Countries like in Japan, in Korea, and in Singapore, I think 1 in 5 will be 65 years and above in the year 2030. And there are growing concerns because as we actually studied, the aging issues, right, in Singapore, we realized that it actually goes beyond just, people not exercising. There are a lot of issues that are actually tied to aging. And, one of the things that we actually want to do is to begin to address some of these issues before they become serious and critical. Right. So when I started the project in 2008, and that was when we actually started to actually apply for the A-Star funding, we realized that there were not many studies done on aging, right? And we were looking at games, off-the-shelf games that will actually help to look into, perhaps something that will help the aging, become a bit more active. But back in 2008, very few studies were conducted. So we had to actually, think of ways in which we carry out the study. So I'm going to actually explain the A-Star project. And the first, objective is to really look at success factors because we want to actually see whether some of these fitness games or exergames out there, are they able to actually, be used to address the dual strategies of active aging in promoting regular exercise, wellness. And because I come from the School of Communication and Information, my background is in human-computer interaction. So I'm actually very interested to look at interaction issues. And because this is actually a system that is looking at exercise, we want to actually look at psychosocial health among the senior citizens. And one of the things that we want to actually address is the idea of intergenerational partnerships. And the project is in the 3rd year now, and we are now developing games, right? Games that will help to encourage intergenerational bonding. So this is our project overview. Like, the speaker has actually said before, there are not many studies done on elderly and technologies, and we have to begin to understand what are some of the issues, because when you actually look into human-computer interaction, users would be the central focus, and that's very important. So the first thing that we did was to do a baseline study. What about the older adults' perception of their self, health, and media game use pattern. And we wanted to actually see whether because a lot of studies that come up from on elderly, and technologies, they come from the West. So wanted to actually see something that is actually more localized. And we begin to say that, and we agree, the current population of older adults, 65 years and above, they are not that computer literate, and they may not be so technology savvy, but there is still hope. Later I'll show you some of the the video clips. They are able to enjoy the technologies if there is a lot more help given. And because we are designing a game at the end of it, you see like in study 9 we have to actually design the game, and we want to actually look at the different elements. We look at avatar, right? What kind of representations will be actually useful for the elderly as they interact with the avatar? Can we design any kind of avatar? We also look at multimodality. What will be the types of modalities that the elderly would actually prefer? So gesture versus control-based kind of interactions. And what is actually really interesting is actually to look at the intergenerational bonding, because if you're actually talking about quality of life, there could be so many different aspects that we look into, and then this is actually one of the areas that we are very interested in. And we also want to see whether games will really translate into fitness. So in the study itself, we have several of these mini studies and begin to come up with some of the findings, as well as design ideas. So we had co-design workshops with the elderly, as well as with the youth. And I just want to show a little bit on the right. You look at the elderly when they first interacted with it, not so green, but in the end they actually got a little bit more excited. Okay, not that easy. The control base, the Wii mode is actually not so easy for them. We had to actually pair youth with the elderly, right? Putting them just playing alone may not be, something that they will actually like to do. These are strangers. When we actually put them together, they are strangers, right? And they are playing. And in one of the, this is the avatar study. We gave them the different types of avatars and look at preferences. This is our design workshop with the elderly and the youth. And we want to actually see that, if they were to design games together, will they come up with something very different? So the whole idea is this all ages kind of games, because in our baseline study, we found that the different age groups, right? We look at the different age groups, and we found that the teenagers have the worst relationship with the elderly. So that's the reason why when we actually did the study, we wanted to actually pair the youth and the elderly together, right? So these are some of the papers that we have published, very much in the areas of, human-computer interaction in terms of human factors, right? I'm going to actually zoom down to, why do we actually, in fact, this idea of virtual exercise therapy is not part of the A-STAR KPI, right? But we were looking at this, and because we interacted with many of the senior centers and seniors, and we realized that these are some of the things that perhaps, we could actually try and work towards this area. Preliminary findings only feel older adults play games, especially console games. So don't, so when we were having this idea of, designing console games for the elderly, there are not many of them who play. However, there's something very, encouraging. Older adults generally have a positive attitude. They would like to be involved, but sometimes they don't know how to. And the other thing I mentioned about the elderly with the youth is found to be the worst. That's the reason why we have selected this group to play together. Attitudes towards games is positively correlated. The more they play, the better it is, Well-being is positively correlated with life satisfaction, and one of the follow-up studies we want to actually look in terms of, like mental and social health, whether that will actually translate into well-being, and and whether we can actually look into quality of life and satisfaction, right? So, but when we actually begin to look at some of the studies, we realize that like a lot of studies have been focused on the we, because the we came out much earlier. But there were also contradicting findings. Some findings said that, okay, we will be good for the elderly, but for some of the findings, they said, no, we can be quite difficult to use. So, when we begin to conceptualize the idea of the virtual exercise therapy, we want to actually explore the usage of the Kinect too, right? The Kinect, and whether it will be useful for fitness as well. So our initial study which was part of a student project. There were two very simple research questions that we asked, right? Is the we or the Kinect more effective? Right, and which one proves to be more user-friendly? Right. So we conducted the study at, it's like Caregiving Welfare Association. The senior homes, the elderly, participants, they are very good people that we actually get in touch with. It's like easy to work with. So we had 25 of them. And this is what we have done, it's like this is our study design. In fact, we selected the bowling game, both for the Wii and the Kinect, and this is the schedule itself. We let them play the Wii first, and then the Kinect, and for another group, they play the Kinect and the Wii. But the whole idea is for them to give us feedback on the Wii play, as well as the Kinect gameplay. And they play the similar type of game, which is actually bowling. Right. We actually set it up that way, to make sure that, it was a big hall, and we begin to actually have the two groups playing at the same time. But in the study itself, we also wanted to see, do they get, do they burn their energy too? And we actually took the pulse rate before and after. We had it all videotaped. Right, so the sessions were recorded. Time was taken. We wanted to look at effectiveness, so we came out with, instruments that will actually measure effectiveness, personal preferences, as well as the difficulties encountered. Right. One of the things that we were interested is how much of the we or the Kinect, right, really encourage exercise. So we were talking to an occupational therapist, and we were looking at, maybe just simple measurements like the range of motion. And we look at this, METS, which is the metabolic equivalence of tasks. And we said, are we able to actually translate range of motion to MET? Right? And and from the bowling itself, you can actually identify some of these activities, right? So that's what we actually did. In the occupational therapies, right? I think at some of the centers, they just draw a projector behind. Okay, so and then they actually measure the motion, the movements. So what we have done is we also did something similar. We couldn't draw a projector, so we actually drew something behind. If you actually see that lady over there, we actually put a piece of paper in terms of, to look at the range of motion. And we measured the pulse rate. We had the interview, and we videotaped the session. Right. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when we actually did the study, right, we were not expecting, which one to actually perform better. But if you look at the heart rate or pulse rate, right, difference before and after, you realize that, there is an increase, right, as they play for, several minutes, right. There has been an increase, but the increase is more for Wii than Kinect. So, so we are thinking, why is that so? The range of motions, if I compare both Kinect and Wii, we were looking at the range of motions less than 45 degrees, between 45 degrees to 90 degrees, and above 90 degrees. The actions displayed by the elderly seem to be a little bit more exaggerated for the kinet. Okay, so in other words, they stretch more for the kinet than for the we. And if I were to actually look, there are some other results, but let me just actually, give you a standardized, scores in terms of the mean score. If you look at it, kinet seems to perform a bit better than we. However, at the pulse rate itself, right, kinet, the we seems to, give a higher heart rate increase. Why is that so? So we begin to have, interview sessions with the elderly, and we found that actually they were more frustrated with the we mode. So I think they actually, so the pulse rate, they were actually more frustrated with the we than the kinet. Right? Now, so some of the things that we wanted to actually look into is actually fitness, usability, and we feel that there are, really have some potentials in terms of looking at, using we and kinet for fitness. In terms of usability, yes, kinet for gesture-based seems to be a little bit more superior than the we, and the suggestion is that, is it possible that we can actually explore this a bit further? Right? So this is what we are thinking. We are starting to build the system, and that's where we actually have to, engage more professional, advice in terms of how to actually make it better to actually measure the health outcomes and fitness. Right. So. When we interacted with several of the senior homes, in fact, we have about 7 to 8 senior homes that we have worked with. Many of them do not have the in-house occupational therapist. In fact, the only one that had the in-house occupational therapist was the study that we actually conducted, the CWA. And we really thought that perhaps it could be actually very useful. Not to replace a human occupational therapist, but to actually have it as, a good alternative, for the elderly, residents to be able to exercise. So we are thinking that, perhaps we can design and develop a computer-based training suite of, exercises for fun, fitness, and begin to actually see whether that will actually improve their, their health. So incidentally, for the A-Star project, we look at the 3 Fs, the fun, fitness, and friendship, right? So these are the 3 constructs that we want to actually study, right? So this was actually, that was our, the objective, to address the sedentary lifestyles of the elderly. This is what we are looking into. We want to see whether it can assess individual fitness and needs. You recommend for therapeutic exercises, and then you monitor and track progress, right, of the elderly. Right, so it is a very simple setup. It's just a computer with, the kinet sensor. And I'm going to actually show you, a quick video clip of the system. So this was the initial study that we did to see whether it's worthwhile even to design the, this virtual therapist. And we want to actually detect the body movements. Yes, there are challenges depending on which, where the arms are actually stretched. But we are beginning to detect the movements and translate that into the back-end game analytics. So currently what we are doing is we are designing the game bottom up. We look at different, we call them small game activities, and begin to actually, put them together, because we need to study what will be the activities that will trigger certain, fitness. right? And this is actually the measurement that we want to use to build it into the game analytics itself, right? So the whole idea is that, as we look at other studies, a lot of studies have actually, pay attention to we do agree that, when it comes to elderly participants, hands-free interaction is better, right? Although it may not be so sensitive in certain, areas, so you have to actually make sure that it's actually within range itself. So these are some of the related studies. I'm running out of time, but the main idea is that, when we look at, because at the university, and under the A-Star project, we still have to look at research. So we have to explore the human factors. So I think in this study, in the different studies that we have conducted, we really want to understand humans. And in this case, will be elderly. They are different from the youth. They are different from the average gamers. Want to look at the impact of use and non-use of gameplay controllers, for example. Want to look at factors and elements in digital games that might affect elderly users and affects their attitudes towards exercise. We have been using some of the models to actually look at acceptance of games, adoption of games, and begin to see how that will actually translate to behavioral change. Fitness and exercise, you actually measure, physical assertion, movement in gameplay, translate that into real physical fitness. The other thing is that because this area is still very new in terms of elderly research and designing games for the elderly, we feel that, there is a good place for us to be able to influence the game development practice and guidelines. Of course, in practice, we hope that this will be fun for the elderly too, and in our interaction with the elderly and the senior centers, we think that, this is actually something that they will be actually interested in, right? So these are the, the study participants, and these are the centers that we have been talking to, and we are very, very happy to, evaluate, the things that we have come up with several of these measurement items, and, and they are in the area of fun, fitness, and friendship. And we have developed these skills, and we are very happy to actually continue to improve the skills and begin to actually incorporate these skills into game analytics, into the game itself, so that it doesn't need to be, perhaps, asking elderly to answer survey items, but to be able to actually capture it in the game so that it can be personalized and customized for the individual game players, right? With that, I'm going to end my talk. If there is any question, or if there are homes or elderly, participants which you think they might be interested to, be involved in the study, please let us know. Right. Thank you very much.